Welcome to the show Inclusive. In this program, we discuss about disability inclusive development, particularly in Pakistan. DFID, Department for International Development, has recently launched their disability inclusive strategy, in which they are focusing on education, social protection, resilience in disasters, and economic empowerment. DFID has been playing a significant role in the development of the country in Pakistan. Today we are very honored to have head of the DFID Pakistan. Welcome, Joanna, to the show. Welcome to the show, Inclusive. In this program we discuss disability inclusive development with a particular focus on Pakistan. DFID, Department for International Development, has recently launched their disability inclusive strategy, which focuses on education, social protection, economic empowerment, and resilience in the disasters and emergencies. DFID has a significant contribution in the development of the country, and today we are very honored to have head of the DFID Pakistan. We welcome Joanna Reid to the show.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Joanna, how do you see development or inclusive development from the perspective of international commitments such as SDGs, UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and other international commitments, particularly DFID's own commitment?
Well, DFID's commitment is to eradicate poverty. It's an ambitious agenda, but we're bold about saying that that's what we want to do, and that's what our money and our advocacy tries to do. But you can't eradicate poverty, you can't achieve the SDGs without addressing disability. The strapline of the SDGs is leave no one behind. And of all people, people with disabilities are most likely to be left behind. So we cannot really eradicate poverty if we're not serious about leaving no one behind, and that means not leaving disabled people behind. And so the UN conventions just give you a framework to do that and really encourage us to make that kind of commitment. And that's what DFID was doing when it launched the Disability Inclusive Strategy, is saying that we really need to go that extra mile and make the extra effort to leave no one behind.
Since you're working in Pakistan, how do you see, what's the status of inclusion of the marginalized communities in your development programs in the country, and how do you address that?
Well, I think it starts with looking at the status of disabled people or marginalised people in the country overall. And I've been very humbled. Every time I go out on a field visit or just meet and interact with people, I'm always humbled to learn from their lives and their experiences, because we're all informed by our own experiences of meeting people who are different from us and meeting people who have different life experiences. And one thing I'm very struck by is we're doing a lot of work on birth registration. It's hard, to get registered as a baby in Pakistan. It's not necessarily obvious. The further out you are, the more rural they are. Imagine a disabled child. Imagine a family saying, oh, we've got to go that extra mile to not just register that child, but register a child that looks different, that is different. So even as basic as that, just giving a child an identity is really important, and giving a disabled child an identity, giving a girl, any marginalised child, an identity. That's where it starts from. And then making sure that they can have the same opportunities in life. Because I think cultures the world over, this is not just true of Pakistan, but all over the world, cultures label people. And they label people as different. And it makes it harder for them to access the same opportunities that I perhaps had. I have one difference from you, I'm a woman. And sometimes that makes it difficult to access some things. But we put labels on people and we make it harder. So accessing education. If it's a deaf child, accessing a world of communication. So we need to look at what makes children different and how we can give them the same opportunities in life.
You very rightly mentioned that disability is a diversity within, and like if we accept diversity, then we can enable the environment. And I heard that DFID has contributed a lot in inclusive education, particularly in Punjab. Can you highlight some of those achievements and the landmarks which through this intervention has been achieved?
Sure. So again, in this spirit of saying, okay, so great, we're getting children into school. We've all got a target of getting more children into school and them learning more and staying longer. That's fine. But you get the quick wins, you can get the numbers up, and then you realise that there are children that are left behind. Again, it's this leave no one behind. And the children that are not getting to school, they're probably girls, and they're probably disabled. So if you're really going to actually be fair and inclusive, then you have to, again, go that extra mile to make sure that children have opportunities. So some of the things that we're doing is using the schools that we're already working with the governments, both Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, using the schools to say, can we open mainstream schools to disabled children? What is it we need to do to allow that to happen? Maybe it's just a little adjustment. So any structural work we've done, we've made sure that physically disabled children can access the school. There may be ramps or easy access if wheelchair. But let's not put a label on children. Let's say we will include them. So we're putting children into mainstream schools by challenging and paying a little extra for that to happen. We're also helping to pay for more children to get into special education department schools. And I think we're enabling about 35,000 children to do that. Again, it's a huge number.
I understand,
but again, and the government is committed to this, but sometimes it's hard to find that extra bit of budget. So we can bring some money, but we can also bring our voice and the advocacy to say, no, we need to go that extra mile. We want to challenge each other to include. And so things like the mainstream schools, special schools, we're paying for transport, additional transport.
To interrupt you, we will continue this discussion on inclusive education. Here we have to take a break. Stay with us. Welcome back. So can we start the discussion where we left on inclusive education, how to include, what are the enabling environments we can create?
Well, again, I think it's about creating high expectations so that we deliver on opportunities for everyone. So again, if you just think about either girls that are excluded or disabled children that are excluded, let's say, no, that's not right. Let's make sure that we put in place things to include them. So it may be mainstream schooling, or it may be additional facilities in school to get disabled children in. We're working with the Deaf Reach schools in Karachi to make sure that children who are deaf are able to learn sign language and learn. And again, I've been very humbled to visit them. A deaf school must be the quietest school I've ever been to, but the children are communicating with each other in a very lively way with each other using sign language. So it's like a school playground that we would visit with noisy children, but they're doing it in motion. And it's really fun.
It's a ray of hope that 35,000 children have been enrolled in these mainstream schools, and they are going through the same classroom where their siblings are going. So, but as a fact, like we have 2.5 million children with disabilities are still out of school. So, what do you recommend to scale up these activities, and what are the required interventions which other development organizations can follow in the government?
So you've quoted a number, and it would be great if that number was right. So I think the other thing we've been able to do is to challenge on data collection. And so we've brought experts in and brought all the development partners and the government together to talk about data and to talk about, are we asking the right questions? What does disability mean? How do we define? What are the needs of people? It's very easy to label people. We can spot someone in a wheelchair. But someone at that very conference asked, how many people came here in a chair with wheels? And she said, everyone did. I saw you all arriving in a car. And so that challenged us to think about the labels we put on people. So let's collect the data. Let's ask people the question, what is it? What does your disability mean? How can we meet those needs? So let's get the data right, and then let's challenge mainstream schools, mainstream data collection, government departments to take responsibility.
I totally agree with you that we are focusing on conservative estimates, and data on disability is not available at all. Actually, it was missed out in the recent census, but they are going to have some sample surveys very soon, and probably maybe we can get a bigger sample about the disability data in Pakistan, but they are still uncounted population. So there are big gap in the policy making level. Like we had a legislation in 1981 on special education and rehabilitation. After that, we didn't have any rights-based legislation. The one legislation is proposed here in the government, which will be enforced soon, hopefully. But what do you suggest for a disability inclusive development approach? What kind of policies or legislations need to be in place, and what do you recommend?
Well, you referred to recent legislation that's coming through here, and I'm really proud of, I'd like to think that DFID had a part to play in that by, at the same time as the UK was hosting a disability summit in London, we were hosting a summit, a satellite summit here, and brought people together to put together that charter that challenged the government and challenged on policy. And what I would hope DFID does is be a champion and work alongside disabled people's organisations and advocates for change, so that we're actually challenging ourselves as well as government to make the policies. As I say, it's about inclusive policies, it's about the data, it's then about raising expectations and giving children the opportunity, because give children an education and then they can see the opportunity, then they will push the boundaries. So then we get on to economic empowerment, jobs. But let's start with the education and then look further as to jobs. Even voting. We challenged in the last election, the Election Commission of Pakistan developed an inclusion policy to make sure that polling stations could accommodate people. Wasn't perfect, it's all a work in progress. But I wouldn't say the UK is perfect either. I have a friend who is blind and has a guide dog, and I follow her on Twitter, and I learned so much about the daily experiences of a blind person just by seeing what that community talk to each other about.
So you have seen like any disabled people in the decision-making process in England? Are they part of the parliament, or is there any process they can be consulted for the decisions taking for them?
It's a key part of this strategy is that we must ask people, because I must not assume what someone else's need is. So just to take the example of the friend with a guide dog, you would assume that they would want help, that you would touch them and help to guide them. That's the worst thing you can do, because actually it's the job of the dog to guide the person, and touching someone is an invasion of their private space. So learning simple things. So you only learn, and you can only develop policy if you listen to people and listen to what the needs are and respond to those needs.
Joanna, we will take a break here and we will continue our discussion. Stay with us. Yeah, we were talking about the culture of disability acceptance in the UK. In Pakistan, like, people with disabilities are not accepted as part of the society. So can you give us some more examples, like how the people with disabilities are living there in UK within the community setups? What are the key changes at the community level are important?
Well, I can talk about that, but I can take that very directly back to Pakistan by saying that we should practice what we preach. And so we, 2 years ago now, I guess, we had a vacancy for a short-term post for a UK-based person to come out. We advertised that. The best person for that job was in a wheelchair. And everyone said, oh, we can't do that, oh, we can't do that. But actually, we took it step by step, or wheel by wheel, and we made that happen. And we had to adapt the building, we had to adapt accommodation, and you will see around the High Commission now that the impact of one person in a wheelchair coming and working for 4 months here in Pakistan has had a lasting impact on the High Commission. We have ramps into building. This individual could not access the canteen in the compound, and now we see ramps into the canteen, a ramp in the main building. But what it did, that was one type of disability. What it did was provoke a conversation around us as an organisation. Were we inclusive, and could we set an example in Pakistan? If now it's law in the UK that you have to have access, we should apply that here to our workplace, and by that we can set an example. So it's about being inclusive, having that discussion, what it means.
Yeah, your intervention through this disability inclusive development strategy, a debate has started in the corridors of the government in Pakistan as well, as we have seen that Ministry of Planning is taking it very serious, and they are including disability for the first time in their 5-year country plan. So this is a big thing. We can see changes at the policy level. But as you mentioned that you have an anti-discrimination law in England about disability. In Pakistan, we are going to have disability rights bill, which will be a law very soon. But how to implement these laws? How to make sure that these laws are being implemented and affecting the lives of people with disabilities?
So you're absolutely right. You can have all the policies you like and all the bills that you like and all the nice words, but if you don't change things in practice, then it doesn't actually benefit people. So I think the value of bringing together people from disabled persons organisations, from government, from all walks of society will help us to actually implement, because we need to shout out, we need to say when things are not happening, we need to put it out there. And today with things like social media, it's really possible. It's possible to name and shame, to call out mistakes, to encourage change. It's possible to do that in so many different ways nowadays. So we should harness the power of digital, harness the power of social media to tell people about the experiences of ordinary people's lives. One of the things that I was most proud of recently was the Deaf Children's School. We had a Scottish theme here for Scotland's national poet recently. And we had a big party here. We brought a band across from Scotland. And the Deaf Children's School did a poem, one of his poems, and we filmed that. And I thought that's bringing different cultures, different groups together and giving them a platform. They were so proud. I was so proud to make that happen. So let's use all means available.
This is definitely a big impact that we can see in the lives of people with disabilities with these programs. And I think we will have another program particularly on the strategy, the different strategy next time. This is because of short of time, we have to close this program. Thank you very much, Joanna, for joining us.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk.
Indeed, it was a wonderful discussion, and we are very much hopeful that after the legislation is in place and our development organizations will remain contributing in the country, we will have disability inclusive society very soon. See you next week. Allah Hafiz.